Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with two leaders of our Executive MBA program team, Associate Dean for Executive Degree Programs and Leadership Initiatives, Jim Detert, and Director of Student Affairs, Laura Bordoni. I recently caught up with Jim and Laura to talk a little bit more about how they're managing the experiences for our classes of 2020 and 2021 as those classes transition to virtual class, as well as the plans that they are making for our incoming class, our class of 2022. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Jim Detert and Laura Bordoni. Jim, Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be with you.
All right. Well, appreciate your taking time out of a very busy week. It's LR2 now, second leadership residency for our class of 2020. I wanted to start, though, by just checking in and seeing how the two of you are doing, how you and your families are holding up. Jim, let's start with you. How is everything?
Well, all things considered, I'm not going to complain. You know, this is obviously a crazy, unprecedented time in my life and my family's life and in everybody's life. But I'm also really clear as we sit here in a large, comfortable house with plenty of resources and looking out at nature that this is sort of a 1%er's version of this problem. And we're holding up just fine. And we're trying to use the time as effectively as we can to revisit old positive memories and build some new ones. And so, I'm grateful that we're well, and much more importantly, I'm worried about those not faring so well and what we can do about that.
Absolutely. You're right that this is a time to reflect on many things that we have to be grateful for. I will say, quick aside, before we get too much further, I believe your family was watching some movies together. I was struck that y'all managed to watch two great movies, Clueless and Princess Bride. This came up in one of our town halls. And I wanted to know what you have watched since then. I asked this as a movie buff. So.
Yeah, so what we decided to do, I have, as you know, Brett, and Laura knows, but others of you will come to know, I have a high school senior and a college senior at home. And so we decided we were going to have a tradition of rolling movie choice each of the 4 days. My wife or one of the girls or I would pick the movie. And the movie the following day, when it's your turn, has to in some way connect thematically to the prior day's movie. And it's interesting you mentioned Clueless and Princess Bride, because those have been in, let's say, the 20 we've watched, unambiguously my two least favorite. But hey, that's what happens when you're only picking one of four. Let's see, the most recent couple we've watched, which actually I quite enjoyed, we watched Remember the Titans a couple days ago, which is one of my all-time favorites. And then we watched Footloose last night. And I guess in between there, we watched St. Elmo's Fire. So we've realized it's kind of been it's been a lot of sort of oldies but favorites, and it's been fun for us to watch that our girls actually seem to quite enjoy these kind of mid '80s kind of semi-classic films.
Of course, St. Elmo's Fire, really kind of the beginning in some ways of the Brat Pack, and also a movie of DC area interest. They're all recent graduates living in the Georgetown neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. There are a lot of Georgetown shots. Which was, now having not been able to be in Georgetown for the last month or so, it was kind of a nice reminder. And of course, Remember the Titans is T.C. Williams, which is just a few miles from our Sands family grounds. So.
Awesome. Well, a strong movie lineup, I would say. So thanks for sharing that with us. Laura, how are you and your family doing at this time?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Brett. We're doing, I would echo all of Jim's sentiments that all things considered, we're doing well. We're healthy. My husband and I are home together with our 2-year-old daughter, and all of our respective families are quarantined in their different homes, but safe. So we're, it's definitely an adventure. Having two parents working full time and a young one at home, I think it helps me relate to the students sometimes, although they have even more on their plate, obviously. But it's been a blessing to repeat again, that just looking for kind of things to be grateful for. Having this time with my daughter, who's normally in school most of the day, has been a treat. We spend a ton of time outside. And then, my husband and I kind of take a deep breath at the end of the day. And Jim is inspiring me to rethink. We've been doing more either new releases, or we tend to go way back where we've been working through the top 100 lists, but I kind of miss the 90s. So I feel like, Jim, if you haven't done Breakfast Club, I think that would be the next one on my list to rewatch. So I don't know how my husband will feel about that tonight, but maybe I'll post that. But anyway, all good otherwise, Brett. So thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Oh, doing okay. Watching some movies. I'm also a movie fan, and if Breakfast Club is not in a top 100 list, I'm doubtful about that list, I should say. Obviously, John Hughes classic from the 80s. There's a lot of great movie history too about that, should you want to take a deep dive. I've been going on a lot of long walks, listening to podcasts. It's funny, I was reflecting on what I did this weekend, which is very similar to what I do most weekends, which is walk around and read books and go to the grocery store and that sort of thing. And obviously some of that's been pared down, but to your earlier points, kind of does make you focus on what's really important and what matters, and maybe what matters less. So, and my family's hanging in there, and they're in North Carolina. And so, it's good. It's been fun to stay in touch with everybody. It's amazing how all the technology that we have now makes it possible just to see people and connect with them in so many ways. So thank you for asking, Laura. So kind of brings me to what's going on with our current classes. We've had a lot of prospective student interest in how our 2020s and 2021s are faring. Thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about the many things the program team is doing to support those students, but also just how the students are doing generally. So let's start, just with that sort of high level question. The current executive format students, Laura, how are they faring right now?
Yeah. So, I think like everyone going through this pandemic, there's a variety of experiences. Some of our students, are medical professionals who are on the front lines and facing a much larger challenge that some of us can imagine. Some are busier than ever. Some are homeschooling young children, and some are home alone and facing that challenge as well, and looking for more things to do. So it's certainly a challenging time for everyone. Our students were really busy before, and had a lot on their plates. So there's certainly, I think, some additional stress here as folks manage their own home life and their families. So there's been a lot of emotions, but I would say overall, we've been amazed by the students. They've really come through with a positive attitude. They've been tremendously resilient and are kind of doubling down on their commitment to the program and to each other. They've been incredibly supportive of one another. They've partnered really closely with us, and we can talk more about that later. And they've also been kind of stepping up to help their communities. So I think, while there's a lot of challenges right now, I think we've been pretty amazed by the students and their general attitude overall.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be able to join late, but join nevertheless. A virtual happy hour that had been organized by the 2021s, and I was struck by just how upbeat everybody was. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world, but they really do seem, and that's obviously just one half of the group that we're talking about. But it was good to see the students still connecting and enjoying each other's company. So, Jim, that brings me to sort of thinking about our 2020s. How is that class doing? What's going on with them right now?
Well, as you might imagine, this is the class that was just a final couple of residencies together away from graduation, and then graduation itself, and having seen all of that, either move online and or be postponed. You might say the major response has been, in a lot of ways, sadness. At least that's emotionally the reaction. And as someone who has high school and college seniors at home, I find myself quite able to relate to what that's like. And I guess the silver lining in that, if there is one, is that what I think that really reflects is how much students come to love this program. They love coming together. They love each other. They love what the intense time away from everything else does for them. When we come together at the very beginning of the program in LR1, we tell them that our aspiration is not just to be, some educational transmission experience, but a transformational experience in how they see themselves and what they hope for and expect of themselves. And I think the degree of sadness we've experienced about not being able to be together like we normally are actually just shows how much what we aspired for them back in August 2018 at the beginning has come true for them. They really find this to be a loss. Behaviorally, though, on the other hand, they've been super. They've been flexible. They've adjusted as well as we could have asked them to this new reality. And they've been doing everything they can to really be helpful to each other, to us. Objectively or more specifically, we, of course, have shifted all classes to online at this point. We've had to postpone some things like, planned trips, whether that be things like the San Francisco, marketing innovation trip, or other kinds of global experiences. But even there, we immediately shifted the San Francisco trip to a trip initially was going to be run out of Roslyn, and then we shifted yet again in very quick order to an online version, to a virtual version of that. And we had lots of major tech company executives still dialing in for those classes. Similarly, we've just started LR2, our final residency week together. And I'm pleased to say that both the faculty and the students have been really accommodating. We've changed the schedule. We've spread it out. Since we're not coming together physically, there's no reason to do as many hours intensely in one day. So we've spread 1 week out into 2 weeks, offering some things in the morning and then again later in the evening to try to accommodate different schedules. And as you mentioned, the virtual morning coffees, we're still going to do a virtual dinner on us where we sponsor students to order in food and participate in small chat groups, conversation groups together. For the class of 20, of course, the issue that lingers right out there is that graduation was supposed to happen in about a month. That obviously on that timeline is not going to happen. But the university has stated very clearly that they are planning for an alternate date graduation event. And so we're staying tuned for that. And, we assure those students that we'll keep in close touch until then and until we can bring everybody back together for that well-earned celebration.
Thank you for that. I imagine the students have been helpful to you in sort of thinking about some of these modifications or the approach here in terms of spreading things out or just timing of stuff. That's always been a consistent part of the program and program culture, and might be surprising to our to our perspectives listening to this podcast that students play an active role. I'm curious about that, Jim.
Yeah, they've actually been super about that, and you're right. I mean, I think we see this educational experience really as a partnership. These are competent, mature learners. These are not young people interested in being sort of told how it's going to go from one direction, from our direction. And so I mentioned that week-long San Francisco trip that we converted to an online experience, and students immediately after that class very proactively and constructively got together and generated a list of types of pedagogies that had worked better or not as well online, types of curriculum that had resonated better or worse. They came up with lots of constructive suggestions about schedule. From what might appear to be as minor but turns out to be quite important, as things like 15-minute breaks are just fine when we're together in person, but it's not enough when you have, potentially kids at home and a whole bunch of other things going on in the background. So, simply saying, why don't you extend breaks between classes to at least 30 minutes? And so, yeah, there's no question the students, and as Laura may mention, in the class of 21 have been equally proactive about helping us figure out the best possible way to continue to foster a great learning experience in a world that none of us had hoped to be in as recently as 6 weeks ago.
Thank you. So that's sort of a natural segue here. You're both podcast pros at this point, setting me up for my next question. So, Laura, how about the class of 2021? How are they doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to the class of 2020, their classes have shifted online as well. They're not confronting the graduation sort of culmination of their program sadness. They're more facing the uncertainty of how long this will go on and how much of their program may be online or not. I think that's been a challenging emotion for them to process as well. I think the great thing is that we have seen them kind of quickly accept that and pivot towards, okay, given this is the world we're in for the foreseeable future, how do we make the most of it, and how do we work with the program on that? And so similar to the 2020s, they've been tremendous partners. So for example, last weekend was their first virtual on grounds weekend. They had their second on grounds for quarter four. And it went really well overall. They hosted, as you said, Brett, virtual happy hours. They also got together over lunch and breakfast certain days. And then we as a program fielded a survey pretty quickly after the weekend to say, hey, how did that go? What can we be doing differently? And so there's formal feedback, but then there's also a lot of informal sharing of students reaching out, us reaching out to them. And a lot of that also gets filtered through our class reps, who really serve as the leaders in the class and sort of the voice. So they gather a lot of the feedback and ideas and they bring them to us. And that's been a great partnership. So I think, we're working on what the next couple of on grounds will look like for them. As of right now, their classes are online through June. We're of course closely monitoring the situation and we largely follow whatever guidance comes from the University of Virginia more generally, and then, adjust for our schedule if needed. Of course, the underlying theme is that we're certainly only going to bring students back together when we feel it's safe. A couple of other updates that impacted this class. There was a group scheduled to go to China in March, and that was canceled, but we really quickly pivoted and we brought them all together in person in Roslyn, the first weekend that we were still able to. And so they had another weekend with the rest of their class, which I think is always welcome to have more opportunities to be together. And then we also added additional global trips later in the program for them. Hopefully, if we're able to travel, they have opportunities to go to Europe, to Japan, or China in 2021. In terms of our global travel, Europe is the next trip that's supposed to go in July. We will make a decision about that pretty soon. Obviously, this is the global travel part is one of the most difficult things to navigate and to know what's going to happen with that. So I would say what we want people to know is that we would never kind of penalize anyone for things that are out of their control. So we on our end will adjust any of the requirements related to global residencies if we need to. And the same would be true for any future programs as well, of course, our future classes. So, we're adjusting to make sure that our students aren't unfairly penalized by something that's, again, not in their control. The good news here is, for the class of 2021, like the 20s, they're pros at Zoom. This shift has been a lot easier on them than potentially, the residential program or other programs. They know the learning environment. They even had a norms discussion amongst themselves to really think about how to make sure they make the most of it and contribute. So we're full steam ahead. Those folks are in exams right now for operations, econ, and a leadership course on impact investing. And then next Monday, they start their next quarter. So they'll be in operations 2, decision analysis 2, and then an elective in the program.
Thank you for that update. Obviously, our students, as Jim noted and as you noted, are great partners for us. And obviously that includes the many leaders, but also just the students in the class generally. I'm always reminded of how accessible the program team is to all of the students, whether it's during weekend residency, just around asking questions, being available to help out. And certainly in this current world, I'm sure y'all are getting emails and ideas and suggestions and phone calls. And such a great group of people who work to support the students here. Laura, this one's going to also be for you. Just because you work as director of student affairs with our executive MBA population, and so imagine that this is a time where students are presenting different kinds of needs or support. And I wonder what is the program doing right now to support students beyond just maybe the immediate class schedule or sort of academic experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that is very, very top of mind for both Jim and I and for the entire team of, how do we support students? How do we keep doing what we've been doing? So things like you said of being around. I actually hosted virtual office hours throughout the on-grounds weekend just so that people would kind of know that we're there, we're online, and then a member of the program team's on every one of their classes as well. So how do we keep being supportive in that sense, but then what do students need in this new environment that we're in, especially given so many of them are under quite a lot of additional stress at home working and potentially having kids, or, in many cases, work has gotten even busier for folks. So, at the outset, pretty quickly as things shifted online, we started hosting a series of town halls that were meant to really be a two-way conversation, one for us to share any updates that we had, and then to just give students a place to just share what's on their mind. And I think we'll probably continue to do so periodically. Jim, with another professor, Andy Wicks, hosted a great session this weekend for the class of 2020 heading into LR2. And it just was a nice place for the students to open up and be honest about what they're feeling, and to talk about, how is this pandemic influencing the business world as well. There's a lot that's changing that can be applied to, the courses they're in. So town halls is one. We've also made a few changes in the short term to try to support students from just sort of a stress level. So we temporarily shifted grades for this current quarter to pass-fail. We've also are working to offer some adjustments for alternate forms of class contribution. We appreciate that contributing in a class of 60 or 70 folks on Zoom can be challenging. It's definitely doable, and our Zoom sessions have great conversations. I've sat in a lot, and it's pretty amazing. The case method lives on in Zoom, but it's also challenging. And so some faculty are offering extra credit opportunities for contribution, or just different ways to engage on discussion boards. Some have added peer reviews. And so just trying to get creative generally. And then, of course, working with individual students who need additional support. So I've tried to reach out to all of our students with a personal touch. And then our Career Center is also reaching out to each and every student to check on, what's happening with their employment status, their career searches, how has this changed things, and what additional help they need. So trying to make sure that we're checking in on both, health and well-being as well as career needs. We, as I said, we fielded a survey to understand kind of what students need from us in terms of schedules and how the online world is working. But then I've also been really amazed at, I continue to say this, the students rising to the occasion and supporting themselves. So I work closely with our community reps, and their charter is sort of community in the broadest sense, both in terms of the community that we all live in, serving that community, the community in terms of their classmates, and the community in terms of partners and families. And so they have launched a health and wellness resource page. They host a weekly mindfulness moment that's a half an hour of yoga and mindfulness. And we're, trying to share a lot of different mental health resources through that group. We're also, our social reps are, as we've talked about, hosting happy hours. We're shifting our Friday Night Live speaker series to online, different days of the week. Seeing Friday nights, I think, can be tough for some folks. So there's a lot that we're trying to do, but there's a lot that the students are also supporting each other with, which has been pretty inspiring and helpful for us. I mean, we at Darden really believe that the students, should be the ones kind of leading in many cases. And so it's great to see them partnering with us on that.
I think it's always good for people to hear that Executive MBA students do that too. As busy as they are, they take an active role in shaping the program and the program experience. I think it underscores the fact that, to Jim's earlier point, that this is not transactional, that this is a relational program where people are invested in the experience. So Jim, I know that obviously faculty have had to transition, to Laura's earlier point, and talking about some of the grading and some of the how is participation accounted for. I know faculty have had to transition how they think about teaching and delivering their classes. How is that going? How has that experience been?
Well, I think actually this is a case where we're in a pretty darn good position because, the ExecMBA program is already a hybrid program. We have the in-person weekend residencies usually, but we have online synchronous and asynchronous sessions during other weeks throughout the program. So we have a faculty that is quite comfortable already teaching online synchronously. And that means many of the startup struggles you may be reading about, whether it's your own kids in K-12 or some of the other stuff you've seen online about, the nightmare of, faculty can't even figure out, how to get their camera on or mute themselves or whatever. Those things simply are not happening for us. We know how to use this technology. We know how to use it effectively. We can even run a pretty darn good case discussion online. We can get people out in small groups. We can engage in other kind of pedagogical methods in an online environment. And I think, the net of that is because our faculty are not adjusting to the very basic sort of how-tos that so many others are right now. They've actually been able to spend their time taking their online teaching to the next level. We're working hard to not just, convert content exactly as it was planned for an in-person environment, but to really innovate and deliver the best experience in this environment. And I think this is also where, the real core of the Darden culture comes into play. We're in an environment where, if you were in the faculty office building on a regular basis, what you would see in terms of hallway conversations are a lot of conversations about teaching and curriculum, the art of what we do in the classroom. And the same thing has continued in an online environment. We have a lot of online faculty forums of different types, and those discussions now are heavily about best practices in the online environment. We have, ongoing Google Docs being created and updated regularly about best practices in this kind of learning environment. So, I think it's a fair summary to say we're not interested in just surviving during this sort of online era. We plan to thrive online, just like we aspire to do in person. And of course, there are specific things that we're also trying to be, as agile and quick as possible. We're building, for example, a whole course on business responses and tools for the COVID-19 era, which we intend to be ready to offer in the next 2 months. This course is being co-developed by 3 of our faculty affiliates, whose main jobs happen to either currently be or have very recently been the chief medical officer at the University of Virginia Hospital, the CEO of the University of Physicians Group, which employs 1,200 of UVA's doctors and nurses, essentially almost the entire pool, and a very senior partner from McKinsey, whose area of expertise and service for the past 30 years has been healthcare. And so, I would say, to sum up, we're adjusting pretty darn well. It hasn't been nearly the transition for us. It is for most, and as a result, we're able to focus on excellence and innovation, even in an environment like this. And that's something I feel, really is a unique strength of Darden.
That's great to hear. I think it always helps if you're going to teach in an online environment. Why not just start with really great teachers, which is obviously the case at Darden. They obviously faculty research published and are experts in their areas, but also take such pride in the craft of teaching. And not surprising to hear that filter through. Jim, your area of expertise is in leadership, and I wonder how that knowledge base is serving you, helping you during this time where there just seems to be so much discussion on what we need now from a leader, and what leadership during a crisis should look like. How has that been helpful to you?
Yeah, as an organizational behavior scholar, really in many ways, I'm an applied psychologist. I think I am probably both much less surprised at many of the things we're now witnessing and experiencing, and also probably quite a bit more disappointed in a lot of what we're seeing and witnessing. Just as a few examples, it's not surprising actually to anyone who studied leadership for several decades to sort of watch how our national political leaders, healthcare leaders, et cetera, are acting, or to see people's responses. I think we sometimes hear the phrase that character is made in crisis situations, and I think the truth is that that's not actually the case at all. I think character is revealed in leadership situations. What you tend to see in kind of moments of high stress or crisis is more of the real or natural or unvarnished version of a leader. Whether there's growth or not, whether there's sort of character formation, I think is a lot more about what happens after experiences like the one we're in. Related to that, it's not really surprising to someone who studies leadership to see the gap between good leadership and poor leadership just being exacerbated, especially in the eyes of leaders' direct subordinates. In crisis situations, you need huge amounts of trust. Trust is built over long periods of time. So if I didn't trust you in the first place as my boss, and now you have to do things more quickly with even larger stakes, with less apparent input, the likelihood that I magically feel good about those decisions is very low. You can demand trust, but in reality, people won't give it to you if you haven't earned it over the long run. It's also, I spend a lot of time thinking about organizational communication. It's not particularly surprising to see how much, trouble we can get ourselves in when we have to be sort of in these thinner communication mediums like email or even Zoom. So much of what we believe and feel about communication stems from all sorts of nonverbals, or even just, really being able to understand people's intent or underlying meaning from tone, seeing their whole body. So I think, we're bound to have more blowups now because the communication medium has changed. It's also not surprising at all that we're seeing more of people's, worst selves on display in addition to, some really wonderful best selves. The whole reason that my colleague and I, Bobby Parmar, and I built the experiential leadership lab at Darden is because we know that how people behave under incredible stress is usually quite different and usually quite less skillful than when they're calm and well rested and feeling safe. Unfortunately, it's just a fact that under conditions of acute and chronic stress, people are less in control of their emotions and their behavior. They tend to resort to very early patterns. And so, again, some of what we're seeing, while disappointing and potentially harmful, it's not particularly surprising if you study this stuff. If you put this all together, and this is actually something Laura and I were discussing with the class of 20 students on the town hall she mentioned, the check-in on Saturday night. I predict that what will probably happen is there'll be relatively little voluntary turnover for the next year or so, because in this crisis, obviously the people will largely feel the need to be glad just to have a job. But I think as this all shakes out, there's probably going to be a lot of voluntary turnover because people are now seeing, a lot of naked emperors and a whole lot of decisions that don't accord with their own values or principles. While they might not be in a position to act on that now, eventually they will. So, I think to sum up, there's no way any, halfway decent human being would have wished for this pandemic we're in. But if you are a leadership scholar or a student of organizational behavior, this is certainly a time that is both revealing and instructive for people who spend their life thinking about this stuff.
No, thank you for that. It's clear you spend a lot of time thinking about these things. And I would say, for those of you who are listening to this and interested in reading something that Jim has shared recently on this topic, recommend to you his article on Ideas to Action, which is Darden's web resource where you can find a lot of great articles and thought leadership pieces from faculty and sort of friends of the school there. So, Laura, I'm going to come back to you because I know that we have some incoming 2022 students, so many numbers to keep straight, 2022 students who listen to the podcast and may be wondering about plans for the coming year. Obviously, on the calendar, the start date of school is orientation, August 16, followed by Leadership Residency 1, August 17 through 21. And I've gotten a number of questions from people about what the current planning is for the fall. So who better to ask than the two of you? So where do things stand?
Yeah, absolutely. First, let me just say that we're really excited to welcome the new class. I've had some opportunity to get to know a few folks here and there on different events, and it's been fantastic. And we're excited to continue to work with you, Brett, and admissions to fill out that class. As of right now, we are planning on starting the program in the fall as planned. We certainly want that to be in person, absolutely. But we also will prioritize health in making any and all decisions going forward. If we can't create the right conditions to be together in person in August without risking our students' health, then we will absolutely find alternatives. Of course, we're right in the midst of contingency planning right now in the event that we're not all able to be together in August. So we're looking at a lot of different scenarios. We are certainly aware and sensitive to the fact that whatever we decide, we need to do it as soon as possible so that our students are able to plan accordingly. Unfortunately, as you know, and I know our future students know, the situation is pretty hard to predict. So we'll have to make some tough decisions with whatever information we have at hand. We're not alone here. We're working very closely with UVA generally, with the residential program and other programs to understand what makes the most sense. The university also, we follow their guidance, and so they may make decisions for the entire community that we have to follow pretty closely. It seems unlikely that they would allow some students to gather, within a certain college and not allow other students to gather. I think that we'll continue to follow their guidance very closely. But again, as of right now, we're planning on kicking off in the fall, and we hope to provide updates to students as soon as we are absolutely able to make decisions that impact their lives.
Jim, any message that you would share with our 2022s who are thinking about the start of school coming up?
No, I would echo what Laura said. I guess I would just, say that I hope you all understand that as excited as we are to meet you, as much as we desperately want to be in person with you, you should know that we will never make decisions that would prioritize anything other than ultimately your health and the health of the whole community. And so, while the university in many respects is likely to be the primary driver of when we're able to be back in person, and or, whatever other sort of combination methods, we end up utilizing, just know that there's not a faculty member here who doesn't want to see you or a staff member here who doesn't want to see you in person as soon as possible. And I guess the other side of it too is make no mistakes about it, that whatever our first in-person date is, when you join this program, you are part of this community, and all of us, not just Brad, Laura, and myself, but every member of the Darden faculty and staff becomes your long-term family, and we're here to support you well before that first moment together, whenever it is.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think one of the things that's been a bit of a silver lining for us on the admissions side is that this class does have the potential to be one of the most connected classes prior to matriculation that we've ever had, just because since everything that we're doing is virtual, and Laura referenced this earlier, we've had meetups, we've had a mock class at this point. We're going to have a women's happy hour, in about a week's time from when we're recording this. We have additional mock classes, virtual first coffee. I mean, everyone can attend everything, which is not always the case with our in-person events. And so, to echo Jim's point, this is absolutely a time to sort of be building out that community and embracing getting to know your classmates. As soon as you know you're coming to Darden's Executive MBA program, start signing up for as much as you can, because everybody's interested in getting to know everyone, and obviously that's the culture of our program as well. So obviously, there has been a tremendous amount of information flowing from the university as well as the Darden School, and I think both groups have done an incredible job keeping us posted with what's going on. And just from where I sit here in the Washington, D.C. area, I've been struck by just sort of the incredible community that exists at the school and at the university broadly, just how people have banded together. Laura, I wonder what's been your takeaway, sort of you reflect on how Darden and perhaps the university have responded over these past few weeks.
I would completely echo your sentiments, Brett. I've been amazed. I've loved being a part of this community, and I knew that it was a caring community, but I've really continued to be pleasantly surprised by how much people are kind of stepping up and supporting each other. So not only has the school gone to great lengths to support its students, but it's also been looking out for its staff and its community. So we receive daily email updates. Our Dean Scott Beersley hosts weekly town halls. University of Virginia and Darden have also are making significant investments and efforts to support some of our contract employees who have been impacted by the lack of need for hospitality. They may be furloughed, and so there's a family meal program that's been created, and a $2 million emergency assistance fund created by the foundation to support those folks, which has just been fantastic to see. And our students also continue to ask, what can we be doing? How can we support the local community? And so there's a lot of stories out there. One example is there's a group of 2020 EMBA students who created basically a startup to collect any masks that are out there, to sew new masks, and to build masks using any 3D printers they can find in the community for Charlottesville. Another example, there's two alumni who have a clothing manufacturing business that they have shifted production to masks as well. And those are just a few examples. Our faculty have been hosting, really interesting informational sessions, writing articles, using their expertise to weigh in on the pandemic and create other teaching moments. So, I think it's been fantastic to see everyone support each other. The other takeaway I have is that, Darden is still a fun and kind place. I've had a lot of laughs. Of course, there's been some tears we've all shared, but, we're all still making the most of the situation and having fun. And I think our students are doing the same. So that's been great.
Absolutely. And I thought that's a great summary of everything. I mean, it's hard it feels like so much has happened over the past few weeks, and continues to happen. I know certainly on the admissions end, I think we feel like things have been busier than ever. And I'm sure that's how it feels to many people around the enterprise and our listeners and anybody tuning in for this podcast. And just a lot happening right now. And so it's great to see sort of the community join and sort of stay together during this period. And we are trying to get, I should say, our students who are working, I think we will be able to do it, our students who are working on some of the startup in Charlottesville around personal protection equipment. I think we're going to get them on the podcast. So I'm excited about that, to have them talking a little bit more about that. It's an incredible testament to the, as Jim noted earlier, their character and just what incredible people they are. So as we wrap up here, I'll start with prospective students first. Jim, what would you share with people who may just be beginning their research process looking at Darden's Executive MBA program? We've got a few more deadlines here. We're in the midst of our April 10 round. We've got May 10, June 10, June 25. What would you share with those people about the program and where things stand currently?
Well, we've talked a lot about, the very current sort of unique environment we're in. So I won't be repetitive there. I guess I would sort of just go out a level and say, I would still tell you the same thing I would tell prospective students at any point in their exploration in any other year. And that is, all top schools, whatever else you're considering besides Darden, all top schools have world-class faculty. But the mix of what's rewarded, what people are most passionate about, and therefore what faculty spend the most time on does vary a lot across students and across schools. And, what I would encourage you to really look into is the energy, the quality, the investment that each school makes in its teaching experience, in the experience that students have with faculty, with each other. Because in the end, your experience is not going to be fundamentally dictated as a student by the difference in what any of us as individual or faculty as a collective publish, academically for each other. It's going to be impacted by the level of excellence in the classroom and the attention and resources devoted to that. And I can tell you that the very, very special thing about Darden, the thing that drew me to it and keeps me here, is the quality and the care about the educational experience. And so when you're doing your explorations and asking questions, doing due diligence, I would just encourage you to really focus on the educational experience, because while there's all sorts of other statistics and rankings and whatnot, in the end, the one set of facts that matter for you is the quality of the educational experience. And I really do think on that front, you'd be hard pressed to find anywhere else in the United States that will give you a better experience.
Thank you for that, Jim. And it's clear, just being around faculty for the few years that I've been here at Darden, how much they enjoy being with the students and how much fun they have in the classroom, whether it's in person or virtual, as is the case now. It's reminded of this. Shane DeColey, who teaches accounting in our program, was nice enough to take time out of his Thursday evening, no less, last week to connect with our 2022s for a mock accounting class, a bit about Hollywood accounting, and such great presence there. Obviously, so patient with the students who were never taken one, and most of them had never taken sort of any kind of class in accounting. Some had, but many had not, and sort of getting up to speed with that, and obviously his enthusiasm for teaching came through in that. So, Laura, what as you turn to our class of 2022, and you sort of think about those students who are listening, we talked a little bit about sort of what's being planned for them right now. What might you suggest that they think about or do, or any final words for those students?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first, if they have questions, they have concerns, they have doubts, or they just want to talk to someone, I would say, please reach out to Brett. I think many of you have my contact information already. We're happy to talk through, whether your decision, it's just a general decision, or maybe you're weighing different factors now, given the world that we're in and how it looks different. We're happy to try to be helpful as you're thinking through things. So reach out if you have questions. I would say and similar to Jim's point, I would say this regardless. Going back to school is a very personal decision. It's a big investment of time, of finances, opportunity cost. And so understandably, you may be scrutinizing that decision more than ever. And I think take the time to reflect, talk to folks at at our program, other programs you might be looking at, listen to Brett's podcast, follow the blog, and really try to get to know the school as you think about this decision. The other thing I would say is I've heard countless stories from our current students that they are really seeing the value of their MBA more than ever right now, and applying things they're learning to the real world. For example, we've had students talk about how they're learning workflow processes and operations and using that to figure out how to change operations in their company right now, given the new environment that we're in. We're talking about leading, leadership courses and adjusting content to think about how do you lead a team through a crisis. And so I think now can be a great time to take some of those, learn some of those skills and take them back to this business world that's evolving significantly and probably will not look the same after this pandemic. So I say that as a small plug to think about, but my general sentiment would be, reach out, get to know the school, give it some serious thought, and let us know how we can be helpful.
Thank you for that. And obviously, with the course that Jim was describing, thinking about leadership and equipping leaders for this particular moment and this time of coronavirus, schools programs responding very, very much in real time, building out course content. Not surprised to hear you say a sort of real time return on investment, which we know to be part of the program's value and benefit already for students. That in a time where things like leadership and sort of being able to be a sort of nimble problem solver and thinker and a collaborator, that those things that our students would be seeing even more return for them, and more applicability for what they're learning in class. So thank you both for taking the time today. It's been great catching up with you. Obviously, like I said, we've been getting questions from prospective students about all the things that we talked about here. So I know that this episode will be very, very valuable to them as they navigate the next steps in their journey, and certainly for our 2022s. Be good to sort of hear what's current state. So Jim, Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate being on.
And that was my interview with Jim Detert and Laura Bordoni, two leaders with our Executive MBA program team. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. And until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.